programming language that compiles to JavaScript. Strictly saying, it's a superset of JavaScript, which means that any JavaScript code is a valid TypeScript code. What TypeScript adds on top of JavaScript is the ability to define types, which leads to a number of benefits. Those benefits become more apparent in projects with huge code bases. So why would you use TypeScript? To me, there are several reasons. The most obvious one is that you can catch bugs at the compile time, which would otherwise leak into the runtime. Let me show you what I mean with this little example. First of all, make sure that you have TypeScript installed. The flag G means that we want to install it globally in the system. First, let's create a JavaScript file. Imagine that you have a number, we'll call it salary. And what you'd like to do is you would like to print out the magnitude of that number, basically saying the number of digits it has. So one way to do that is to use the length property. If we run it through Node, you can see that it returns undefined. And that's because our variable here is a number, and number doesn't have the length property. Now, if we rename that file, set it a TypeScript extension, and then run it through TypeScript's compiler, we can now see the error saying property length does not exist on this type. You might notice that we didn't change anything about it. What we did is just rename the file, but it's still the very same JavaScript code. We haven't introduced any types. But TypeScript is smart enough to infer the types from the code. So it knows that the salary here is a variable of type number, and the number doesn't have this length property. When we run it through Node, we didn't get any error message. It just silently returned undefined, but it didn't throw any error. And imagine you have a user who uses a web interface. He might see that undefined string somewhere on the screen, but since no errors is thrown there, we as developers wouldn't even know there is a problem until that user will reach out to us and tell us. While with TypeScript, we can see the problem here as early on as possible. Now, in order to fix this, we should convert it to string first. Now, TypeScript won't complain because string has length property on it. Let me show you another example. Imagine that you have a user who has a name and a salary. And we would like to print out his salary, but we made a mistake putting here double R instead of a single one. As you might have guessed, we get this error saying that property salary with double R does not exist on this type, the name of type string and the salary of type number. So as you can see, even in this case, the simple typo can be caught early on. So that was the first reason why I think TypeScript is beneficial. The other very important thing is that With all that type information out there, editors and IDEs can be much more smarter and provide a better feedback for a developer. Let me show you what I mean by opening the Visual Studio Code. Let's say there is an error here. As you can see, immediately our IDE is telling us that there is a problem, that the property salary doesn't exist on this type. This is nice, and we can fix it right away. The other thing is the auto-completion capabilities. So if we put here user and press dot, you can see there are two options here. We can either choose name property, which is of name string, or salary property, which is of name number. TypeScript by default knows a lot about JavaScript. For example, it knows that there's a window object out there, and it has all those different methods. Now imagine that we want to use, for example, Lodash, quite popular tool. We can install it with npm install Lodash. But what we can also do is we can install types for it. And with the types information out there, our editor can be smart enough to suggest what we want to use and provide the documentation. And then we can see all those different methods around there. For example, if I choose order by, it tells me what this method does and how should I be able to use it. So that was a second benefit. With type information, IDEs and editors can be much more smarter and provide a better feedback loop, making the development experience much more nicer. I would like to also talk about a third benefit, which is usually underappreciated, and that is the mindset that you have with TypeScript. Being able to program with types lets you think through your programs. So you usually would think about the types first, and then you would think about the implementation. That mindset lets you build much more flexible programs, and at the same time much more robust. It leads to programming where you think through what you do first, and then you think about how you do it second. It's really hard to explain that in few words, but you will definitely understand it better while watching the next videos.